what would you say to a skeptic? What would you say to somebody maybe that goes to the gym 3 days a week and maybe runs a couple miles, but so like what is
You know, I think that's a really good question, because what happens is that what is important, I think, to realize is that there is fitness and there is yoga, and they are not the same, and they're not even in the same category. I think fitness, we really want to work on toning our muscles and on being fit and really taking care of our cardiovascular system. And that is all very good. So I'm all for fitness.
Yeah.
But what happens is that the yoga practice is more psycho-spiritual practice. So in other words, it works also with our mind in the way that we work with our emotions and thoughts. So for a skeptic, I think that you know, if you're looking for something, if you feel, I think that everyone that starts yoga has sort of like this a calling in some ways of like, oh, you know what, I really had this problem with my back and I want to try yoga, I wanted to not do. So there is sort of like a sense that that's something that may benefit them. So I think that, you know, if you don't want to do it, it's going to be hard to convince you, but the best thing is to just try it. And for some people, it's just not what they're looking for at that moment in their lives.
Yeah.
And so, and they cannot even open to it because they're just not interested in it. And but I think that if somebody comes to a class, then maybe they can make an informed decision rather than just saying, no, yoga is not for me.
Yeah, I understand. And so can we talk about stress for a second? Maybe I know that I read a statistic recently that over 19 million Americans are suffer from some type of stress. And I'm curious, maybe your thoughts on the source of stress in people's lives.
Well, I think that it's fairly obvious that, you know, somehow our world is completely out of balance in terms of, you know, many symptoms of that. And that's just, as a human race, we just sort of have come to this moment where we have created a world that is very multi-layered and is very creative, but also is not fully respectful of our natural rhythms and of our body. It's really also really has something to do with the body, because I think what happens is that in the Western world we have really worked on developing our minds in a way of knowledge. In the Asian world, in the Eastern world, the focus has been more about the inner world and contemplating, or rather achieving wisdom. And knowledge and wisdom are very different. And I think what is exciting at the moment is that the Western mindset of progress and achievement and individuality is meeting a more Asian mindset of contemplation and wisdom seeking.
Okay.
So in terms of stress, I think that as human beings we know that something is not completely right with the world that we have created.
Yeah, and so I mean, what is it that for you? What do you see like? Is it maybe technology? Is that a problem?
I think technology is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge part of that, because what happens is that we are removed from an experience, and when we go online and when we work with internet and email and so forth, the experience at first we had on a more direct way of like even calling somebody on the phone, hearing somebody else's voice, now is another step further removed.
Yeah.
So I think that we rely less and less on our senses in order to really understand what's going on, but more on information that comes in a very diluted form.
Okay.
And so I think that there is a huge overstimulation of the mental chatter. And then the other thing which is really difficult is that we have so many distractions. So it's very difficult to find quiet. And when we find quiet, in terms of if we have like a 5 minutes somewhere sitting in a room where there's not a television on, or if we're not have access to the Wi-Fi or whatever, then suddenly it hits us that our mind is completely
searching for something
to grab onto.
And so you use the internet. You use social media, and you have an iPhone, right?
I do.
And so, and how do you seek then to balance the two? Sorry.
You know what? It's always a challenge, because I can see that there is something about that really sucks you in.
Okay.
And so I think that as a yoga practitioner and as a meditation practitioner, which by the way is the same thing, it's not that you either do yoga or meditation, because ultimately yoga is about meditation. But what I really try to always seek is a sense of counterpointing or counterbalancing. So let's say that I spend, I work on my own website, I do my own website. Let's say I spend an hour or an hour and a half reprogramming the website or redesigning it. Then what I try to do is to go outside for at least, maybe not the same amount of time, but a long time, so that I really counterpoint that experience, which is very virtual, with an experience that's very direct, where I feel my breath, my body, I feel the elements, I feel the wind touching my face and all of that, so that I really have that direct experience. So that's what I try to do, and also to pause, because what happens is, what I find is that very similarly as television, and I personally don't have a television, I mean we only use DVDs, but that there is a sense of being pulled in to such a degree that it's really hard to get off, even if when I sometimes sit in the waiting room of a doctor and there's television on, even if you don't want to look at it, you're kind of like, okay, so what's going on? You're sucked into it. So to be able to disengage from that by coming back to my feelings, my sensations, my breath, and to really make that conscious decision to be present to what's happening here right now, rather than what's happening in wherever it is in the world that the television program is on.
And so, I guess to switch gears and to talk about your business here, your small business, because it's interesting, because you have yoga. Yoga is it's such like a non-competitive activity. It's a bit spiritual, and yet you've also got, it's a small business, so, and business is by nature competitive. And so I don't know, how do you strike the balance between these two, the paradox?
Well, you know what, it is definitely a challenge, but what is actually quite exciting to see what is happening in the community of this business or this space is that as a community we are really trying to support what we do here, and without being aggressive. So sometimes competition comes with aggression. A lot of times it comes with aggression, or like, I'm better than you are, or you know, like, why are you going there? And what happens is that we have found out that there is a lot of people who love this place. There are some people who don't love it, but most of the people do really love it a lot. And we just really try to do what we feel is authentic. So I think that our goal or our desire is not to compromise. In other words, in the yoga world there is always different, as in every other sort of field, there are sort of these fads, you know, one kind of yoga or one particular style is very popular, or this is very popular, or you know, to just let go of that and just say, this is what we feel works for us, and there will be people that works really well for them and other people that it won't work. And so in a way, I think everyone who works here at the studio has a path, meaning they're working consciously with their lives, and we offer that with authenticity and sincerity, and whatever there's a lot of other places, and they have to do whatever they have to do.
That's a really good lesson, maybe in general for people. You just constantly catch on to the new fad, and then try to, because then you're probably too late anyways at that point if you're just trying to grab on. And so take us back maybe to 14 years ago. It would be 1997, and you were starting this venture. You weren't here, you were on Main Street. And I don't know, maybe you could talk a little bit about that experience of starting up, maybe a big challenge maybe you faced in the process.
Yeah, you know what, it was a really interesting time, because I came from England. I had a very successful career, and I basically ended, or rather I shouldn't say ended up, but I basically